why podcasting? Why would a MotoGP World Championship, that essentially the primary business is broadcasting races on TV, right? Why would they decide to do a podcast? What was the kind of the motivation behind that?
I think in the beginning it was because it's it's a trend on social platforms and digital storytelling, right? So everyone's starting to do mini documentaries and things like that. So therefore, people were doing that, producing those sorts of things. And then with podcasting, well, that's the latest thing. So we have to find a way to jump into this aspect of storytelling, because in the MotoGP audience, the broader MotoGP audience, there's going to be people who like to listen to podcasts, and maybe they want to hear a long form interview with Joan Mir, the MotoGP world champion from last year. There are people who love Drive to Survive style F1 documentaries. So maybe you should start producing mini documentaries, or perhaps sign up for a series that someone else is producing. Spoiler, or something like that. Or then perhaps you want
talked
Nick
about
Nankey
that.
social videos.
We talked about that on episode 4, I think. We talked about the
yes,
Netflix series.
we might have already spoiled it, so don't worry.
And we might have already hinted that there may be a MotoGP. It's interesting coming from you, though, the man inside the paddock. So,
well, I mean, you don't have to be a genius to see all the extra film crews around and everything like that. But yeah, so there's an audience for it, and so you got to tap into that, because essentially, at the end of the day, if you're looking at it from a value to the company perspective, not just there's direct monetary value in obviously doing a podcast, bringing a sponsor on board, partners, maybe your AdSense if you're posting the video on YouTube, that there's direct money coming in there, or you are potentially tapping into a new audience if you're able to. It depends on what the direction is, and we've constantly play around with the direction. I think sometimes it can be not a tug of war, but like we all have our ideas and of what direction the podcast should go into, because there is obviously the potential with the podcast. You can do one on MotoGP and we could talk about tires and all that stuff, but that doesn't appeal to a broader audience. So there's always the potential, if you talk around general topics, things like mental health and generic sporting stories, you can break out into a wider audience. If it gets recommended, funny story, if the podcast covers generic topics and then it gets picked up by this person who recommends it to that person, suddenly the algorithm clicks into gear, and then the next thing you know, you're the number one podcast in India for a week, like we were, because Lynn Jarvis, the boss of Yamaha MotoGP, talked about how he loves going to India or something like that. And so you're breaking into a new audience. So I guess in a very long-winded roundabout way, that's why a company gets into it, as direct monetary value, either direct income from that new dynamic of storytelling, or it helps build a bigger audience, which can indirectly, they might subscribe to MotoGP.com or watch MotoGP races on their given broadcaster.